What a great evening. Thank you very much for coming and braving the midterms. And I'd like to introduce our creative and director.
Thank you for coming, everyone. My name is Stephanie Keene with the Samuel Lawrence Foundation. We're so excited to listen to Steve Chapple tonight. Just before it gets started, please look at the paper on your table. We would love for you to follow us on Instagram. As a foundation, we're working towards removing 3.6 million tons of nuclear waste off the beach of Sierra Nofre. If you didn't know it was there, it's still there when the domes are gone. So please help us clean the beach so the radiation doesn't leak out everywhere. And with that, I'll introduce Steve Chapple. Let's give him a round of applause.
Well, thank you. Before I begin, I think we should pay our respects to the Belly Up and to Dave Hodges, who checked out. One of the founders, and I think we have somebody in the very back. Is that you, Chris? There we have it. Grammy Award winner. My name is Steve Chapple. I'm a former visiting scholar over at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. Written a bunch of books. They're pretty varied, but what we're going to do tonight is talk a little bit about the situation we're all in, not only like climate, but also everything from ice to corruption, I guess you could say. And these kind of meetings in bars and restaurants seem to have been started all over the country, in New York, Chicago, LA. It's interesting, and because Bart Ziegler, the president of the Senate, the shy and retiring Bart Ziegler thought of this idea. We're going to go ahead here in San Diego, and nobody else has done that. So, okay, so let's hit slide 1, I guess, and we'll go through these pretty fast.
All right, just kidding.
Yeah, this was contributed by somebody in the audience, Charles Smith, but this is definitely the big view, right? Gee, what are the risks for everybody alive and the planet? Just geoeconomic confrontation, extreme weather events, state-based armed conflict. That does not sound good. Misinformation is kind of number 2. And unfortunately, over on the right, there's some issues. Extreme weather events, biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse. Let's go to the next slide so we don't get depressed. Oh, look at that. Okay, that it does look a little bit academic. But I just downloaded Keynote, for what you can do on your computer. It's really pretty cool. The situation, global warming, electrotech progress. Electrotech is like, solar, wind, batteries, but now people call it electrotech. I mean, basically China is eating our lunch on that one. Unfortunately, in terms of global warming, it's been, of the last 15 years, 13 of them have been the warmest. Last year was the 3rd warmest in history, basically. And there hasn't been this much CO2 in the atmosphere for about 125,000 years. We're kind of living in the best of times. None of us are quite this old, but 11,000 years, was when it became extremely habitable for humans. And just to sum up really fast for people, what's happening now with global warming, it's warming the land faster than the oceans, but the oceans take the heat from the bounce back from the sun and the radiation that can't get out any longer because of the greenhouse effect. And that warming of the oceans means that there's more moisture in the air. Warmer air holds more moisture. So we've always had atmospheric rivers, we've had those here, but inundating San Francisco. We've always had that, and we still do, but now it's holding more water even. And it comes in pulses, as people have noticed, much faster. You also have with warmer oceans, you have faster hurricanes, not necessarily more hurricanes each year, but they come in much faster, so people can't be prepared, and they can go sort of further, like the North Carolina situation or the Houston one a few years ago. And then we're also in a good spot. The last 200 years in California have been good for, from the time basically that the pioneers came out, has been better and better. But now we're going through a 200-year drought, basically. And some things have been, Amory Lovins of the Aspen Institute once came up with a very good phrase called weird weather, right? Not everybody can figure out, even with all the models, what exactly is going to happen. And I think it's fair to say that the enormous amount of forest fires surprised people, right? LA was a question of hydrological whiplash, I love that term, meaning you had great growth, very much greenery, it dried out, so that's the hydro part, it was a lot of rain, and then it hit the Santa Anas, and so it was the kind of the cliche is that perfect storm. I don't think there's anything that could have been politically done, no matter how many hydrants were active, or the little lake in Beverly Hills. That wasn't such a great time. Okay, so all that, strangely enough, even though it's right in our faces, has led to an attack on science, basically. And Trump did that for the fossil fuel industries, My father was the Secretary-Treasurer of the Montana-Wyoming Oil Company, so I know a little bit about that, with fracking up there. But Trump kind of sold out to those donors, and that meant bringing in Chris Wright, who's a major pipeline guy, to be one of the cabinet members. And so they come up with kind of fed that misinformation, which was on the earlier slide, to make everybody think this is going on. And then a good example is NCAR, the National Center for Climate Research in Colorado, which had 800 scientists outside Boulder, amazing architectural building. And Trump has attempted to, with Russell Vought, the head of the budget, to shut it down. With all the things with Trump and the administration, even though they do that, you almost have to follow up. Because 6 months, 6 weeks later, we've gone on to something else, right? But sometimes, Trump has some pretty good people, and not all Pete Hegseth. Somebody like Russell Vought is somebody to seriously consider as a problem. So anyway, that's where you get all your, or much of the climate research, Woods Hole, of course, here at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, and so forth. Let's do another slide. Well, that's where we are now. This comes from Daniel Swain, who's really very good. He does Western weather. He's a young guy out of Stanford through UCLA and over to that Boulder Research Institute. And he does like a weekly podcast. And I think more people listen to him than anybody else in LA when the fires were going. It's fairly remarkable. So you can just see that the yellow means that it's those are the oceans and they haven't warmed as fast. The real point to notice is that the poles are warming as much as 4 times faster than the rest. Next slide. Okay, and that's kind of the big picture too. Squiggly lines. The world is warming. CO2. Of course, methane is as bad or much worse, but we recognize the rise of CO2. The way it squiggles like that, that's because plants, it's like summer, winter, winter, summer. And we have Ralph Keeling in the audience here. Ralph, who still does that research and makes that possible at the top of Mauna Loa. That's where those measurements are made. And there's been an attempt by the Trump administration to kind of dent the research. It hasn't, fortunately, affected the real measurements on top of Mauna Loa, the volcano in Hawaii, but it has affected kind of rental office spaces, things that Doge can hit. And there's other stuff, methane, nitrous oxide, all of it California attacked, I mean, in a good way. Next slide. And that just shows LA, or us, you know. It's not just the world or the Arctic. That shows from 1895 to now, it's gotten a little sweatier. Next slide.
Yes, it is.
Oh, and Swain came up with this pretty cool idea, the expanding atmosphere sponge effect. And as temperature rises, the water vapor holding capacity of air rises rapidly like an expanding sponge. So when that drops, it puts out a lot more moisture. And he also did a paper which was the hydrological whiplash effect. And it also, the bottom makes sense too, because you have kind of a double whammy. When it's dry, the atmosphere sucks up the moisture in the ground, which dries out the plants. At the same time that you have more moisture up above, you can suck it up. So that's why he likes that sponge effect. Next. Oh, yeah, that's the funding the sciences. It's kind of interesting. Notice that, I guess the timeline isn't there. Yeah, it is. It hasn't gone down as much as Trump wanted it to, and right, because Congress, Senate, and bipartisan Congress voted for the money, pretty much. In some cases, a little bit more, 2%, a little bit less than last year. So they haven't taken the axe to it, but whether the money will be spent. So really what's happened with scientists and that whole world of technicians and everybody studying the climate is people are pretty afraid, right? I was talking to somebody at Scripps, nameless, and he was saying a fairly major grant was killed because it had the word diversity in it. It was about fourths, the diversity of different types of trees, diversity, right? And next. So National Institute of Health, National Science Foundation, and moving along, now we're into politics a little bit. I mean, everybody sees the angry Trump, he has the picture of himself with his ear and the horrible, shooting at him in the Midwest. But this is what Trump looks like, kind of, I guess, off stage, right? And I think it shows you that the guy is getting a little older. He's pretty freaking fat. Although I think we should find out, which McDonald's he buys his food at, because it's like Henry Kissinger ate bangers, which are sausages, every day of his life. I think he hit 100, 101. So destroying the earth and having a good time with it can keep you going, I guess. Next slide. Oh, so now we're into corruption. And this is like this week. Does anybody know what this slide is?
Detroit.
Exactly. Not Detroit, I Do Mine Dying, the old song. And what is that?
Between Canada.
Yeah, this is the new bridge. It's called the Gordie Howe Bridge. I think it cost $4.1 billion. It's about to be opened. And this week, Trump said, well, the Canadians didn't use enough American steel, American labor, Canada sucks, blah, 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 right? But then just a couple days later, it turns out that there's a competing bridge, which is a toll bridge owned by a very wealthy person, a billionaire in Detroit, who makes and their families owned it for decades, and they make $300 million a year from the bridge, which is sort of interesting right there. I didn't know there was a toll bridge between us and Canada. So he has a meeting with Howard Lutnick, who's the Secretary of the Treasury.
Commerce.
What?
Commerce.
Commerce, sorry about that. Yeah, we're over, Secretary of Commerce. And he calls Trump an hour or two later, and that's when Donald Trump came out with the reasons why we weren't going to have the other bridge. So, I mean, it's kind of like you can kind of pick your corruption, right? I mean, way back with Kushner, his son-in-law, got a $2 billion loan back, I think it was at the very end of the first administration. And all of the committee in Saudi Arabia voted against it except for MBS, the main guy. So they did it. Or you think of NVIDIA, those chips which were supposed to keep us ahead of China were sold or given to, allowed to be sold to, is it the UAE or Saudi Arabia? And they were, top secret chips and stuff. And then it turned out 3 months later, just last week, that $500 million was put into the Trump Bitcoin meme thing as kind of a bribery. It's the flood the zone that Steve Bannon, kind of the very strange person who is very smart and ran Trump's campaign for a while, in the first campaign, said that it's sort of impossible to keep up with everything, right? And anybody else have any ideas for corruption? Bart wanted me to have fun here, but it seems like I'm talking too much. Next slide. Oh, okay. I forgot about that. So, does anybody watch Inside Trump's Head with Joanna Coles and Michael Wolff? No thanks, Bart.
Okay, it's right here.
I'm about to
You
get
get to the end of the FC files, and they need it.
Wow. Anyway, so he says, it's like Epstein, Epstein, Epstein. And it is kind of strange. I mean, it's horrible, right? But when you have, again, great videos like when you have Congressman Boebert, the young rowdy woman who now represents Eastern Colorado, and she was in, some people call her Handy Oakley, but she was the one that was filmed in watching Book of Mormon in the theater in Denver while she was giving a hand job to her boyfriend and taking a hit of a joint, of a jewel. And now she has seen the Epstein files, the unredacted ones, and she said that Ghislaine Maxwell should spend the rest of her life in prison, right? And there was another person who was really strange, a congressman from southern Florida, last name is Luna, and who believes in extraterrestrial, interstellar, or interstitial, I guess, like we're in different zones, and maybe true. I think because Leo DiCaprio did a pretty good movie on that, and called her a monster. So it seems to me that it's just, the Epstein thing, of course, is out of control. Of course, it's outrageous. It happened today with Screech Bondi refusing to apologize, of course, to the victims in the gallery. But it seems to me that this has gripped women across America, and in fact in the world. Everybody's been, at some level, been hit on. Maybe it's been much worse. The sympathy is there, and I don't know. Does anybody in the audience think that Trump will get finally caught on that, like Michael Wolff does, or do you think he'll slide off? He's the king of, what do you think? He'll slide off? It's horrible, but if he can last for 3 more years, there's a lot of damage. So anyway, next. Stephanie. So this is kind of crossing over to, there's starting to be pushback. People are realizing that inflation is higher than the last 6 months of the Biden administration. The prices are going up. My wife is from Brazil, so Trump, for instance, put a 40% tariff on Brazil, which meant coffee, orange juice, and beef, right? And it had a fairly direct effect in some locations, especially the coffee thing. And then he did it because of a person like him named Bolsonaro, who occupied the Planalto, the capital of Brazil, in the same way that the January 6th people did. but he didn't get away with it. So Trump wanted to free him, but when the price of coffee, beef, and orange juice came along, he just completely dropped the tariffs. But obviously, I have to tell people in the room there's a big difference between 0.001% of Americans and maybe the bottom third or even half, and where that's going. This is in the Wall Street Journal today. It just sort of shows that the two charts are going in different ways. Labor compensation, or wages, and corporate profits. Next. I was just in Montana working on a guy who goes around the world finding incredible plants, a biochemist, and cures things like for Taxol, which is very much a breast cancer cure, found in the yew tree. But anyway, as I was leaving for the airport, that's the price of gas on Sunday. That's pretty good, right? $2.75 by California standards. And my point is that, you're in Montana, maybe in Missouri, Texas, $2.75 is pretty cool. You think about that. Whereas the media comes out in New York, most people who, most Manhattanites, and certainly most Brooklynites can't drive a car anyway, right? So, not that Trump has ever, either been in a grocery store or driven a car. But I think it's not, we talk about healthcare going up, groceries going up, but there's a lot of people who might not see it that way, Anyway, next slide. This is actually, there's even a better one than that. So now we're on to ice. That's not an image of an ice agent. It goes on in the video. This is a photographer, and he takes his camera, he's thrown to the ground, his face gets very bloodied in the next sequence, but he takes his camera, which is really kind of an iPod, and he throws it out. Have people seen that picture?
Yeah.
He throws it out, and this other guy grabs it and puts it in the, becomes a major event. Anyway, next slide. Oh, this one's really good, but I don't think we can see it. This guy, this is also a type of pushback. This is 10,000 people in a wrestling match just last week, and the other guy, you know the name of the other guy? He's totally tattooed from top to bottom. He looks like, a Viking monster, but he's very political and progressive, actually. And the entire 10,000 people are shouting, "Fuck ICE, fuck ICE." So ESPN had to stop the thing, and this guy is he looks kind of handsome for a wrestler, right? I mean, that's a prejudice, I guess, but he looks like a young Sylvester Stallone. So they stopped the thing. I encourage people to go see that, because that's losing the audience that Trump cultivated. Mixed martial arts, it's younger guys mostly. It's a lot of Latin people that voted for Trump, younger guys again. So if you're losing the extreme macho element of your MAGA base, that's not good. Next slide. Oh, yeah. It says you have to go to YouTube to see that, because it's not family entertainment, but it's definitely entertainment. All right, so I don't know, I just threw those up there as possible solutions. Take off the masks, but we just lost that in California, right? A federal judge said that it was okay for federal agents to wear masks because of what, compared to state agents?
State agents weren't included, so they're reapplying to include that also. The state police cannot wear masks. That was why. It wasn't because he was against the masks, but he didn't include everybody. So they're bringing it up.
That's great. Did everybody hear that? I mean, I thought that what was strange, it should help them too, because I can't think of the fishing game doesn't wear masks around California. Not too many lifeguards are wearing masks that I know. Probably a few. Anyway, it just struck me that's kind of a basic American thing. I mean, people are running around with masks, let alone how they're trained and where they're coming from. Bribery awards. This brings me back to San Francisco. If anybody remembers the great Jello Biafra of the dead Kennedys, he ran for mayor in San Francisco, and he came in number 3. He beat the Republican, and the winner was Dianne Feinstein for mayor, who of course became California senator. But he was a very clever dude, a great songwriter, still around, the dead Kennedys. And he said if he won, he would establish a ministry of bribery for the city of San Francisco. So Feinstein's first move in office was that you had to use your real name. And I forget what his real name is. He's the son of the state librarian of Colorado, though. Colorado turns out some educated people. And remove RFK Jr., I mean, it's pretty bizarre. Here I think, are there any doctors in the audience? Medical doctors? Because it seems to me that like they should get out there a little more, you know? I mean, you have the American Pediatrics and you have the AMA being against all of this. But you don't have doctors striking in hospitals, right? Or even nurses for this kind of thing. I think it's got to be much, much stronger. And now we have, what, 800 people with measles in South Carolina? Bart, what's the takeoff? Bart's a toxicologist in real life. What's the takeoff point where you just can't stop measles, right? 2,000 people? Or? Wait a couple of days? Okay. Just, might cut down on going to South Carolina. The ice blowback is I think it's kind of huge. I mean, people just don't like the brutality of it all, which I think it just comes down to something crazy, like Stephen Miller is reputedly watches videos of ICE beating up people and taking it down. This is his kind of, it's hard to laugh about it, but it's a kind of porn for the guy. It's very strange. I mean, he's kind of a cruel dude from a Santa Monica family, of all things, and who didn't like Mexican Americans in his high school in Santa Monica. It's a strange one, but he's very, very powerful within the administration, probably the number 2 guy in a way, along with the Secretary of the Treasury, the Senate. Those guys are, they're not on the clown car really. They're doing smart stuff. So anyway, it comes to the midterms, it seems to me. So it's possible that already they're trying to figure out ways to inhibit voting, right? Not voting for by mail is, which is kind of an American way. I think California as well. I think it's a majority of people who do that. And having either a passport, certain type of license. Only 51% of Americans don't have a passport, right? And most of those who do are just going over to Mexico or Canada anyway from border states. So something to think about. I mean, I don't know. People like James Carville think that, who was, Clinton's mastermind. The famous one is the economy stupid, which destroyed Bush when he couldn't. George Bush Sr. had trouble knowing how much a quart of milk cost one time in a grocery store. Of course, Carville may have exaggerated the thing, but it certainly worked well. Carville thinks that Bush will do anything, right? And not Bush, but Trump will do anything to keep things going. I mean, it's kind of hard to believe, but it does fit that you could have a major ruckus and then put ICE people around polling places. How many people think that Trump will do something that severely un-American to stop it? That's the majority of the room. Anybody who thinks it's going to be okay without any issues?
Only in blue and purple, not in red.
Say it again.
Not in blue and purple places, not in red. It'll be conditional
You'll be conditional.
to create an advantage.
Okay. it'd be great to pass this around, but that's kind of a quick pressy of where I think we stand and everything. But Bart, if I may call him Bartholomew for short, wanted folks to kind of speak up. So, ma'am, you seem to know a lot about what might be happening or have some fears. Where are you from? Here? Yeah.
Well, actually, we have friends from all over the world. You pass the mic, please.
Yeah, can we pass this sucker? She's got to come up.
You'd have to come up here. What'd you do?
Ask her to come up.
What's your name? Yeah. Okay, let's hear it for Lynn.
It's very frightening for me, and actually we have friends from all over the world. My husband speaks all over the world, and we travel, and I have friends from different countries and that are saying, this doesn't only affect you, this affects the whole world, the instability of the whole world. The instability of the United Nations, a gift to Putin. He's been trying to discredit and weaken the United Nations for years, and Trump is doing it. So it's not only for us, it's the whole world that it's affecting, the whole world. And to see American citizens pulled over, zip-tied, thrown to the ground, and then to hear people today, as they're interviewed by the interview that was today with on me. And why is there a problem? Because people are interfering with the patriots that are trying to save our country. People are, like they call Pretty, that he was going to kill all the poor masked murders. I mean, what scares me is how could we get here and who's still believing this stuff? I mean, I don't know. But I feel like we have lost the respect of the world. We've lost our place in the world as being a leader, a moral leader, and whether people that we hear from say they don't know that we'll ever get it back. And so we've lost so much more than just for us.
You should be up here. Well, let's see. You are involved in sustainable energy, right? Development, yeah. And so is Peter Zorn. You think we'll make our way out of this? One thing I didn't mention was on that electric tax. So, I mean, Trump and Wright, et cetera, and Republicans have shut down some things like charging stations, tried to remove wind and solar from Texas, but in some ways it's too late. What's a kind of takeaway from a good group called Canary is maybe a third, what do you think, Peter, about a third of everything that's happening is being pushed back, but wind, offshore wind and all that kind of stuff is still happening. The courts have been overturning it, but it stalls things out and it makes things much more difficult.
Some of it could be permanent, some of these changes.
Are going to be permanent. Yeah. I mean, it seemed like the Texas legislature was going to get rid of, especially solar, in a kind of clever way. They would make, let's say you had a ranch or something, you had to have a 1 mile setback from the road before you could put any solar panels. Well, that's a pretty big, you'd have to have a pretty big spread. They have a 1 mile setbacks, you know. But that was overturned, both by small towns and stuff, people coming in pickup trucks and all the solar that was used for school boards and running municipalities. And it was also very, very big solar and wind. Texas is bigger in both, I guess, Charles, right? Than even California. And the third state, of course, is Florida, which, and is totally contradictory. I mean, certain Republican governors are going against really major economic interests. I mean, T. Boone Pickens, who came out of oil wildcat, no longer with us, but I think owned, which country club around here did he own? But he then got into wind and made another $1 billion. So, all right, Bob.
Yes.
Bob Hotta, a great inventor.
Hi, Steve. So as mathematicians take a look at proofs, they try to look at the counter view. So the counter view here is the main problem isn't Trump. It's actually the people who support Trump. Okay? And there's a 45%. Had Trump not come around, what would happen with the 45ers? Would they have grown to become, would we had it worse? Is now that Trump has come, are we now exposing the stem cells?
What do you mean exposing the stem cells?
Oh, okay. So when you want to get rid of this cancer, it's the stem cells that are immune to the radiation.
Oh, I see.
Okay? So would these 45% get bigger, and would we have it even worse if we had to deal with someone else who came after Trump? Would these 45 become 65, 75?
Somebody else should answer, but I think, you know, the Democrats kind of dropped the ball, gutted the Midwest. Obama didn't do too much about opioids, tens of thousands of people dying. And Trump just kind of stepped in there in a really good way. I think, from his point of view, it's just hard to imagine somebody as, in my humble opinion, as loathsome as J.D. Vance, let's say, taking over from Trump. I don't know. On the other hand, in terms of a hot button issue like immigration, what are we up to? 600,000 people have been pushed out of the country in one way or another, from horrible prisons to whatever. But it's good. But Americans wanted that originally in a nice way. Dave Winkler.
Thanks, Steve, for talking to us, and thanks to Bart for putting this on. With all due respect, this is depressing. We've got to figure out what to do. We've got to take a positive approach. And there's several ways that I think we all need to get engaged. By the way, Bob, I think the numbers are much worse for Trump. The stats right now are showing his popularity is around 35%. So at least the great middle is starting to move in the right direction. I'm optimistic about the midterms. We just have to look at what's happened in recent elections. The Democrats are taking almost all of them, but I think it's critical for everybody in this room and in this country to get engaged in the midterm elections. We've just got to make sure that we, at a minimum, take the House, and with some luck, maybe take the Senate. Also, organizations that are supportive of causes that matter, like what Ralph is doing and what Charles is doing with Nature and Culture International. We've got to support these organizations to keep, I don't want to say the fire burning, but
Don't say it.
We need to put the fires out. So I really hope everybody in this room is going to get seriously engaged, because if we don't, And we just watch it happen. You're going to see what I saw in Del Mar 2 weeks ago. I was walking on 101 by the river in Del Mar. I saw 2 ICE officers with guns this long, questioning 2 Mexicans in a truck. The guys in the truck took off, and the 2 ICE agents followed in pursuit. So the Gestapo has arrived, and we got to do something about it. Thanks.
And I should just point out, Dave Winkler is kind of responsible for many of the open spaces and land all over North County as a kind of environmental lawyer for the Sierra Club. So anyway, shout out for that. Peter. Peter's on.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Thank you for everyone for being here. I think, David Winkler, absolutely right. The midterms are the most critical thing that we have right now in terms of what we can really do to make change, or at least hold the line, put a finger in the dike, whatever it is. But I do want to talk about something maybe a little deeper, and that is that if you talk to people who are on the, let's say, the MAGA side, or on the other side from, it looks like most of us here, you'll see that our sources of information are different. And people are operating off of different dimensions of what's going on. And that is really hard to solve. And I think that what we have to do, even if we win the House, we win the Senate presidency, we still have this really different set of people, 2 sets of people that are not communicating. And what we have to do really long term is we've got to find ways to communicate and have some common shared values, identify what those are. Because if we don't, we're never going to finish this divide. And this social fabric is going to get torn more and more and more. And we're going to see crazy people come back in power and go out of power and whatever. And it's just not going to be good. So there are some interesting things going on. There's a group in Jacksonville, Florida, that I don't recall the name of it, but they do a thing called Main Street Lunch. And what they do is they say, okay, they line up tables down Main Street of a city, and they say, okay, if you want to come to lunch, bring someone opposite of you ideologically. And then it's curated, facilitated by someone who's a member of the left and a member of the right. And the idea is that you sit across from this person or someone opposite from you, and you just try to find something that you can grasp that you have in common. And it happens that my former next door neighbor, very right-wing guy, we didn't really agree on much, but then he found out that I really did a great hike in a particular place in Colorado, this hut-to-hut place in the San Juan Mountains. And he said, you know what, that's where I go and hunt. And so we got talking, and we had been in exactly the same places and all that, and we got to know each other a little better. My wife still would never talk to him, but we did talk, and we were able to at least communicate in a meaningful way and get away from just this strict wall that separates us. So that's what I'm suggesting. Find ways to communicate with people who you don't necessarily agree with.
Yep.
Peter mentioned Nature Culture International, which is right out of here, one of the best organizations, scientifically oriented, really, structured in South America, especially in Ecuador, Peru. That's Charles. We should give a shout out for you in terms of things happening. And also Ralph Keeling here from Keeling Curve. Was that too general? What were my mistakes, Ralph? Oh, okay. And, but it's always struck me on Fridays at TG's, which is the wildest part of UCSD, on the ocean where everybody has more than a few beers. Of course, the beers are free, so that brings in the grad students. Anyway, you talk about that really in the data, it's all coming from fossil fuel, that it's hard to personally solve issues, right? I mean, for climate change, that that even trees like the Amazon, which are considered, tipping points, things like that. I'm not saying it correctly, but what exactly do you mean by that? That in the data, it's really all about at least CO2 coming from fossil fuel extrusion. So far, there's not too many embarrassed speakers here.
So the question was, he was quoting me after 2 beers, tonight it's only 1 beer, where I said that the climate problem is almost all about fossil fuel. And what I meant by that was that overwhelmingly the most important source of carbon dioxide is fossil fuel burning. It's being offset by the terrestrial ecosystems, which can take up carbon. It's offset by the oceans, which can take up carbon. And there's some role that humans can play in enhancing those sinks to make the problem worse, to make the problem less severe. But the numbers aren't very favorable for that being very much of the solution. So those make sense as solutions if you've already taken a big cut of fossil fuel burnings and gotten the problem under control. But what we're doing today is we're flooding the world with extra carbon that came from below ground. And a big fraction's ending up in the air, some of it's going in the ocean, some of it's going elsewhere. But unless we stop that flood of extra carbon coming into the system, there's no way we can get control of it. So that's what I meant about that.
Much more articulate.
Let me say one thing about controlling climate. I mean, the U.S. now emits less than 20% of the global fossil fuel emissions, and similarly for greenhouse gases. So we own more of the damage because cumulatively over time we've done a lot more. But the solutions going forward have to be in the international realm because we don't add up to enough anymore, which means leadership really matters. And it's a huge blow what Trump is doing to U.S. leadership in all sorts of arenas. And so to me, that's almost the scariest thing, is that we're abdicating our voice, we're casting away the moral message, and we're leaving the world to sort of sort it out on their own, showing that the powerful and the most important countries don't give a damn. So to me, that's really fun.
Externalities. Isn't the real problem, my name is Craig, isn't the real problem externalities? Because we live in an industrial world where the immediate cost of energy out of the pocket, we consider that money that's spent on energy, but the costs of it are in healthcare and lifespan, so it's not a fair comparison. If you compare solar or wind, it doesn't have as many externalities. It has externalities, everything has side effects, but the cost of fossil fuel is not paid for us because we're paying in healthcare in other ways. It's not a real clear use of the marketplace. The marketplace is broken.
Yeah, like the small particles that get into your lungs, the asthma that children all over the Central Valley of California might get, the vinyl chloride factories on the Mississippi, known as Cancer Alley. And just this week, Lee Zeldin, the head of the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, just knocked out, or tried to knock out, what's called the endangerment clause, which means just what you're saying, that putting pollution, by any other name, NO2, CO2, et cetera, into the air causes all sorts of diseases and shortening of life in America, and kind of suffering, really. And think about all those poor girls in the rivers in Texas that time. Anyway, And the hospitals, nobody's gonna pay for that, you know, your albuterol, right? And Exxon, way at the back, we have another customer, sorry.
I just wanted to respond to Mr. Keeling and Mr. Zorn, because I do feel like there's what I think is the chasm between your two comments, which I agree wholeheartedly. I'm not going to argue with with Ralph Keeling, but yeah, without decarbonization, we can't get a handle on this problem. But these carbon sinks do more than sink carbon. They actually are resilient spaces that tolerate extreme weather better than non-resilient spaces. And so whether you're doing that in your city sidewalks or on the landscape level of the Amazon, it might not be enough to draw down this intense, imbalance of carbon that's being emitted. But any space where restoration is done is a more resilient space. And that is something that people can do on small and large scales, from backyards to cities, urban planning, state planning. There's a lot of momentum in the state of California, restore the California watersheds and things like that. That makes you more resilient. That makes you more likely to survive. And I will also say that it is one place, because I do practice, I have one kind of ongoing conversation with a MAGA relative, and I mean, this is like the most frustrating, enraging conversations in my life. I can lose nights of sleep over this, but the one place we have common ground is, like you said, we both love nature, we're both ready to defend it, and there's common ground in, first of all, it is worth it. What he said, it is worth it to find that common ground. I cannot make this guy believe that January 6th was what we both saw on television, but I can convince him that we should put energy into protecting and restoring ecosystem function. And so maybe that's a better use of my time. And we absolutely need leadership, and we absolutely need to stop this, carbon spewing economy. But if we're going to survive, we do need that ecosystem restoration, because even if we stopped all the carbon emissions today, how are we going to draw it down? And how are we going to weather the next flood, storm, whatever? And if we have soils that can sink water, then those soils are by definition sinking carbon. So.
What's your name?
Katrina Goldsmith.
Katrina Goldsmith. No, you're absolutely right, and that brings up resilience and everything that's happening around, the heat shed in San Diego as things get hotter and hotter, for instance, or how to build houses in Malibu and all over LA, et cetera, and southern Florida. But Charles.
Steve, I just want to first point out, while you were talking about the dead Kennedys, their poster was right behind you. Thank you for the shout outs for nature and culture. For those of you who don't know, Nature and Culture is located in Del Mar. We just concentrate on conservation in South America. If you picture kind of the west side of South America, in order goes Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, primarily in those four. And we have currently got 27 million acres into conservation. Give you a little perspective on that, Yellowstone is 2. So we have 13 Yellowstones. We'll hit 30 million by 2030. We are extremely efficient at what we do. I think there's probably no other organization, at least in California, that could make that claim. 30 million acres in conservation by 2030, but we're going to hit that. Efficient, often $2 to $10 an acre. We'll create a protected area at that kind of rate. It's amazingly efficient. The way we do that is we never start at the top, we start at the bottom. So let's say that there's an indigenous group that has no representation. They've been there for thousands of years. They have no way to prove that they've been there for thousands of years, but we will do all the legal work and the political work and the mapping work to create a protected area in their name. So some indigenous group will get a 1 million acre reserve in their name. You don't need to hire park guards because they are the guards. You would not want to enter one of those indigenous reserves and try and log it. You would be in very dangerous territory if you attempted such a thing. But that only is the case once they've got their name on a reserve. Carbon is obviously the theme tonight. We have 4 billion tons of carbon in our forests. So that's not nothing. I mean, there's more to do, but 4 billion tons is a lot of tons of carbon in our standing forests. And we're very meticulous about the way we measure that. We know that our Amazonian rainforests have a certain amount per acre. The cloud forests, as you go up the Andes, have another amount. The paramos on top, interestingly, these places where the trees have given out around the equator at about 11,000 feet, 12,000 feet. But the grasslands up there, the grasslands go from 12,000 feet up to 19,000 feet. The Andes are tall in places. Those contain as much carbon, maybe more than the redwood forests of California, which would have more carbon than any other forest in the world. So the paramo grasslands are astonishingly rich in carbon. And then on the far side of the Andes, down on the west coast, you have the amazing deciduous dry forests. Even though you're at the equator, it just doesn't rain much over there. The currents are very, very cold coming up the west coast of South America. It's called the Antarctic Current, and you can tell that's cold. So it just doesn't breed a lot of moisture for rain. But these forests are astonishingly beautiful. They're all adapted in the way that Madagascar is adapted, not having much water with those incredible baobab trees. Very similar on the west coast of South America. So that's just a tad about nature and culture. We've been effective. We're right here in Del Mar, natureandculture.org. We can turn your dollars into very serious acres of the most astonishing biodiversity in the world. Bart?
How do you deal with the instability of all of this South American countries?
Yeah, so you're referencing kind of the instability, political instability of South American countries. And you might add the corruption as well into that question, because there is a lot of corruption down there. The secret we've never lost a reserve. We've been doing this for 30 years now. We haven't lost a single reserve. We've got about 110 of them in place. That adds up to our 27 million. And the secret is starting down at the level of communities. Once you organize a community to get behind the idea of a 1 million acre protected area, and then you work the political process up, there's no way those guys on top can get rid of it, because they're now losing votes in the process of getting rid of something that the community invented, and they will not alienate the community that feels at the community level like they initiated this protected area. Even though we did, all the legal work and a lot of the political work and the mapping, they always take ownership of these areas. And I would just maybe add that the secret for a lot of you who have never heard of nature and culture before, I would say that we're not the best marketeers in the world. We are the best conservationists in the world, but our marketing is terrible. And partly that's by design. When we put in one of these places, we step back and we do not take credit for these places. Even though we did most everything, we let the locals and the politicians step forward and take credit for it. And we step back, even though we may have done all the work leading to that protected area. So great question, and that's a little bit more about the secret to our success.
And I should say that when Charles was a mere youth, he went around just traveling in a van, taking pictures, and the original Apple computer pictures that were on billboards and everything were shot by Charles Smith. But anyway, all right. How are we doing? Is there any more feeling of accomplishment, outrage, solutions? There might be something. Bart, you said to keep.
The food is great. The drinks are strong. And use straw as well.
Oh, that's good. We still have some more time. So where are you guys from now? Let's embarrass some people. So. San Diego. Yeah. And you're just waiting for the show to start, or you're listening to us? Oh, I see. That's good. What do you do for a living then? Yeah. Sustainability.
I'm going to grad school for speech therapy.
Grad student in speech therapy.
I work in marketing for activewear brands.
Working in marketing for activewear brands. Probably some customers in here, but it's too late for some. And you? A PhD student?
PA student.
PA student. What's that? Physical?
Physician's assistant.
Oh, physician's assistant. Where do you do that?
There you go.
What's hospital?
No, I'm at school.
Oh, you're in school?
Yeah.
All right, physician's assistant. Okay, so we could go around and talk a little bit, but is there anything I should have mentioned more or gone into more depth, do you think? The Paul? What's that?
What's your Substack?
Oh, the Substack. Yeah, I do the Hot Globe with Steve Chapple Substack. It's got, 10, 20,000 people reading it. Strange. And Substack is kind of, in many ways, taken the place of newspapers, which used to be everywhere. And some people have enormous readerships, like Paul Krugman, late at the New York Times. Substack kind of allows you to, be a little wilder. It's not over-edited like newspapers are. Much more fun or outrageous. Jeff Tiedrich, I think, has 160,000 people. It's totally obscene and interesting. And you can be everything from like how to fall in love to how to grow, a vermiculture to big stuff like climate and politics. Heather Cox Wilkins, Heather Cox, yeah, is the #1 person. She has like 1 million people reading it, which is bigger than the LA Times. So that's, Heather Cox Richardson, excuse me. So it's interesting. All right. And I guess I have done a few other books. Breakpoint, Reckoning with America's Environmental Crises was the last academic one for Yale. And Confessions of an Eco-Redneck was my Montana period. Outlaws in Babylon, which is the origin story of American cannabis, is being made into a series. We'll do that over over a 20-year period, All those kind of wild people up in Humboldt, started a lot of restaurants and even some entrepreneurial companies later. So all of that is kind of interesting as well. And rock and roll's here to pay.
I think there's one question in the back.
Yeah, question in the back. Come on up, though.
I got a loud voice. I think you can hear me.
Hey, that's pretty good, actually.
He must be a
I don't want to cause a reverb on the mic.
Okay.
So,
just
thank
keep
you,
it,
Steve.
just have it that way.
Yeah, sure. I heard a lot about, well, let's just say this. Academia cannot take all the blame for things that aren't going well because there's a corporate entity in academia that's ruling everything. In fact, from what I'm seeing in the big picture, and I'm just a person in the community, is that we have a planet ruled by wealth, and it's always been ruled by wealth, and their entity is now shifting that balance of wealth back to their own position. It's all going in different places. Point being that the United States has been the bastion of democracy and has held the world in a more responsible mode. So the big firewall that they're trying to break through to have more profit for their wealthy paws would be to eliminate that one original democracy that's been holding the world together responsibly. So we're facing this Steve Bannon run fascist movement that's very successful. We've heard about lots of things going on with Musk and his satellites. This is all off the record from what you've been saying, but it's been out there. We have
an organized system of wealth that is making its move. They've declared war on democracy, and democracy rests on individuals, so it's up to all of us. Thank you for being here, because you're showing your responsibility. And all of us, as we said, all of us discussing this today, find that common ground with your neighbor. I have a MAGA neighbor who had a poster of wrestlers with Trump and all these guys on his garage, and I deal with that every day. Ex-LAPD, Newton Division, lovely. Yeah, Deaf Inc. So the thing is that everybody's got, but don't blame yourselves for all this, because it is a wealthy economy that is trying to push the wealth back up. And you're doing your best, and I don't like to see everybody saying, well, we have to blame ourselves kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, I don't think we are.
Oh, okay, all right, well, you're doing our best, and I just want to make the point that it's a big thing out there, so, yeah.
Okay, and what's your name?
Ron.
Ron. Go ahead. Does anybody else want to take a slice at the mic? Okay. Well, it's sponsored by the Belly Up here. We can have, whoa, beverages.
I'll step back, I'm afraid. We have a philosopher here.
My name is Michelle. I am not a scientist, I'm a philosopher. I'm a scholar of, you see, although I lived in Madagascar, by the way, so I really appreciate those comments. I am a scholar of Immanuel Kant's theoretical philosophy, and all I'm going to say is that you can't hear me. Okay, Immanuel Kant said, don't make a joke, because whenever I say I'm a Kant scholar, everybody goes, it sounds sexual. Okay, Immanuel Kant, K-A-N-T. Immanuel Kant argues that all the interests of human reason can be distilled down into 3 questions. What can I know? What ought I to do? And what may I hope? He was what may I hope? And he was neither a rationalist, nor an empiricist, nor a Newtonian, or a Leibnizian. Everybody hated him. But I hope we can all agree to embrace those 3 interesting questions of human reason. What can we know? What ought we to do? And what may we hope? And that's all I have to say.
That's pretty good. Maybe we should call it an evening, and we'll just feel free to move around, actually. If there's some people that have talked and you'd like to meet them, we can do that, I mean, of course you can do it. It's a free country still. All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
And thank you, Stephanie, for technically making this possible.
Thank you, everyone. We're so excited to mingle and talk more. I'm going to turn off the mic, but please follow us on Instagram, the Samuel Lawrence Foundation. We'll keep you up to date, and we'll have more of these. And please DM us your feedback. We'd love to take notes or people that you'd like to see. Talk soon.